of the Sportsline Podcast continues as we cap off the month of January. Thank you so much for checking in. I'm your host, Bubba O'Neill. As I say on a daily basis, this podcast is a space for the many extraordinary athletes, coaches, executives, broadcasters that got their start right here in the Golden Horseshoe and have made their mark nationally and internationally. Folks, I believe this individual is our very first five-tool player. He's a native Hamiltonian that was an athlete of the year at Cardinal Newman High School. He attended McMaster University and on the football field set records and earned national all-star status. His skills advanced him to the Canadian Football League, where he became a hometown hero, playing the majority of his 12-year career with the Tiger Cats. Post-retirement, he was everything from a businessman, a restaurant owner, a sports broadcaster, and now he's the commissioner of the largest professional sports league in the country for the Canadian Elite Basketball League. Mike Morreale, you're in the house. Thank you so much for joining us.
And I love the new digs. This is nice. This is nice. I'm enjoying this. Thank you.
The nice coat as well, too.
Yes.
Nice sporty feel here that we got going on, right? Tommy, this has been quite a journey for you, and I just kind of reeled off a couple of things, from kind of the beginning and where it started and where it's been. First of all, you're in your off season right now in the CEBL. What are you doing with yourself?
This is the busy time, right? This is where, from my perspective, it's more strategy, long-term planning. Where are we going next? We've made some adjustments moving into 2024, made some changes. We've got some further adjustments and changes, all for the better in 2025 and beyond. But it's about continuing the growth, right? You can never take your foot off the gas. Canada's a big country. It's not easy to run a sports league in this country. It's so vast and wide, but we've managed to make a name for ourselves, and that's important. And now it's just about not having that slump, right? Always being ahead of the curve, trying to think 4 or 5 steps ahead. But I got a great staff, great ownership, and it's onward and upwards.
And you're one of the few leagues that went through the COVID, and you came up with a plan with the SummerSlam. You survived. Have you cleared that? It seems to be, because you've expanded the league.
Yeah, I think going into this year, we've had some great growth, and COVID was horrific for everybody. But we were able to see the silver lining because we got through it, and a lot of others didn't. And that kind of galvanized us as a staff, as players bought in. They're like, okay, these guys believe in us. Nobody took a pay cut. Nobody took a haircut. It was, you're getting paid. This is what we're doing, and we're going to make it work. And it was difficult, but we got through it, and it got through the next year of COVID again without fans, and we established ourselves as a league that was doing things before others. And then last year with some configuration, addition of, the Calgarys and the Winnipegs, and then we really feel like we're coming into our own. And, if we look at our numbers now versus where we were at this point last year, we are miles ahead and miles, which is very good indicators of where we're going to go in 2024.
And I think a lot of that success is getting into those markets, playing in the right building, as we're seeing with the Professional Women's Hockey League, and we saw with the CFL in certain situations, playing in those right buildings and getting the television as part of the product has been a huge help.
Yeah, us landing TSN, and no discredit to CBC, was where we started. It was the right place for start. It was the awareness factor, but we had to be on a dedicated sports station. It was too important not to, and the perception of being on that station elevates your brand. And it really attracts eyeballs, not just domestically, but other places, and it really acts as a way to make the business better. So that has been really, really big for us. It's an important, growth part of where we're going to, and not just domestically, but getting more linear games on TV, getting more access to, fans watching us all over the world. Basketball's a global game, and that's really helped us. And we play at a time when there is very little to no basketball professionally. So it opens up people's eyeballs and, their wallets sometimes. We just talk about, the betting component of it. And it's really going to be, and has been, the part of our league that's really been, I guess the secret sauce is when we play, and the access to players and access to a time when there is no other basketball.
What are players telling you?
Players love it. Players love it. They've been our best advocates. I've in my background being a player, but being leading an association, I always have a lens of, okay, what's the player think? How is this going to impact the player? We want to make positive impacts on players, not negative. We've increased our salary cap this year a substantial amount. We've added a couple new wrinkles to allow for, our per game salaries to go up by removing certain players from the salary cap. And these are all done in a way to make sure the individual players, benefit. But it's not just the time they spend here, it's the time they spend after here and the new opportunities they have in Europe, or the access to the NBA or the G League and the pathway. So if we continue with the pathway, continue to compensate players appropriately, provide these amazing experiences in the spring and summer in Canada, which is a fantastic time to be here.
For sure.
It all comes together as a destination. And if you become a destination, and especially for the right players, then it just snowballs because they tell each other and there's just word of mouth that happens.
And I think that's you've been around long enough now where we're starting to see for the player side, I'll keep it here for the you said, the secret sauce here. Yeah. Lindell, Washington, Wigington, like guys all of a sudden, they're in the NBA. Wait now, didn't I just see that guy in the CEBL?
Yeah, we've had 14 guys go through to the NBA and NBA contracts. You got, several, probably 40, 50 plus on an annual basis go to the G League and come back. So that relationship with the G League, the NBA on the basketball side is very nice. And it's, you stay in North America, you can play all year round, you get compensated right. And you're getting seen, you're getting noticed, you get the name on the back of your jersey. So everybody has, and when I go across the league and in all the cities to start the year, I talk to all the teams. I say, I don't know why you're here. Like, everybody has your own individual story. But I do believe you can accomplish what you need to accomplish in this league. And, you have the platforms here to do it. And we've seen it happen, and we continue to get recurring players and some more consistency in that. But we're also able to attract new players that people haven't seen before, or maybe want to check out what we're all about. And that's the encouraging part.
You are, and I know this is maybe something you'll look back long past retirement or whatever, from all of this professionally, but you have set this standard and an example for many people, not only in Hamilton, but across the country, as someone that started at one level, did so many things, learned so many lessons, and gotten yourself to where you are today. Let's start back at McMaster. Right? Let's go back to the
some
McMaster.
Good days there. It's not so many wins, but we had a lot of good times.
And that was a growth time for we had the Les Prince field with the grass that was about this long. I always remember.
Oh God, tough to run already. I'm already slow enough. I didn't need the tall grass to slow me down.
But you had some good days at McMaster, and it fostered you on to the Canadian Football League. What was that journey like?
Well, when I was in high school, I've been blessed. First of all, I grew up in a football family. Like, the Morreale side loved the Ticats, and my grandpa went back to the HAAA grounds and the Jim Trimble days and watching the first forward pass and all this stuff. So I grew up in his brothers and sisters, so my great aunts and uncles, and it obviously went downhill. So, and then on the other side, on the Masadi side, I got Paul was playing, and then Christian's getting a chance to play, and this is like, okay, my eyes are open to an opportunity. And being a fan first and sitting at Ivor Wynn and watching Ben and Rocky and Grover and Rufus, and mind-blowing to me.
Heroes.
Heroes. And it's funny you say that when you look back, it's hard for me to even put myself in their shoes that I played on the same team, on the same field. Like, it's kind of hard, right? It's just, I kind of separate myself from that. But going to Mac wasn't an easy decision to me, because I had been football. The minute I started playing, which was grade 10, I didn't start till later. And I just felt like this is what I want to do, and I would do anything to get to that level. And it was always the CFL for me. That's what I wanted. And didn't want to go to Mac because Mac was in my hometown, and I wanted to go out east, or I wanted to go down south. And as I started looking at that, there was a guy by the name of Steve Bruno, who was the coach at the time. No relation to Al. Al came after. It was also my coach. But Steve was a relentless recruiter. And for years and years and years. And finally I said, you know what, I'm going to take a visit. I've never visited McMaster. I had no idea. Never been to the campus. Never lived, in Stony Creek, Hamilton my whole life. So I went to go look, and I said, man, this is nice down here. This is a good spot. And then slowly I started hearing about, Ryan Hudecki and Jason Foley and all these guys from St. Mary's, and then other guys are coming from OP. And then I'm saying, oh, this is turning into like a Hamilton crew. And I always believed that Hamilton football is some of the best football around. I still believe that to this day. So I thought, okay, this changes my mindset on where I want to go. Maybe I can stay home, and maybe I could be successful. And then with that recruiting class, I just felt really comfortable. And, we didn't win a lot. I've never had a winning season in 4 years there. But, man, we had such a good group of guys, and it taught me a lot of lessons. And there wasn't a lot of support for MAC football like there is now. We were past the glory days of Bernie Custis and Phil Scarfone, and we were before the days of Ben Chapdelaine and all that, and Jesse and Kojo. So I kind of fell in the middle, and along with our teammates. So it was a bit of the lost years, but boy, they were built some resiliency. And I would train on my own, get up early in the morning to try and use some facilities because they weren't open to me during the day, and I think all that made it tougher. And I had great supportive teammates, and we played a style of game that allowed me to grow as a receiver. I was very lucky to play at Cardinal Newman under a offensive coordinator or head coach and Don Fernside and Bob Nordoff, who threw the football. That was very rare in high school.
And at that time.
Right, and it was a 4-down game, and most teams ran. So that got me used to that. And then at MAC, we were not afraid to throw the football. Sometimes we had to throw the football. We didn't have a choice. And so I just learned by being part of it. And I think, I could have went to Western and probably rode the bench for 3 years, and then maybe played my 4th year and maybe been successful, had maybe more trophies and more awards, but I wanted to play because there's nothing replaces playing. And I got considerably better because of my teammates in practice, but from playing in a game.
CIAU at the time,
yes,
All-Star.
CIAU, oh yeah.
At that time, you're getting an All-Star nomination there. You're breaking McMaster School records as in terms of receptions and yards. You get drafted by the BC Lions, and somehow you land with the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Like, this is like a Hamilton guy, plays a McMaster, gets to the Hamilton Tiger Cats.
Yeah.
Pressure?
Excitement. My excitement of getting drafted to BC was off the charts, and that didn't, my excitement waned pretty quickly after about 4 days in camp when they're sending me packing, and then I'm like, oh, well, that wasn't what I anticipated, but I did get drafted my 3rd year, which was a choice that I made because I thought, okay, if things don't work out, I'll come back to MAC. I was in an honors program. I took my BA in my 3rd year. I figured, okay, if I come back to MAC, I'm going to play football, and I'm going to take some courses that I think interest me, right? That's a good landing spot if things don't work out. So that happened. I came back. I was still a 1,000,000% in on football, but I started taking business classes, doing things a little bit more casually and enjoying that part. And lo and behold, Toronto picked me up, and a lot of people in Hamilton hate to hear that story, but it's just part of my journey. But the chance to come home to Hamilton was the greatest decision I ever made. And I'm glad it worked out that way. And no matter how many times I bounced here and here, you can't take everything out of me that's Hamilton. It is what it is. It's part of me, right?
I gotta ask you the question. I mean, because and I remember those days. You were seen as a Hamilton hero, playing for the Tiger Cats. What a story! What an example for young kids in Hamilton. You can do this. Then you, as you said, you're wearing the double blue. And those visits to Ivor Wynne, I remember a couple of receptions and I remember a couple of drops where the people let you know.
Oh, and that was when I played in Hamilton. They were letting me know. I remember when I went to Toronto, I mean, we laugh about it now, but I was the second coming of O'Shea, right? Osh was, and you know what Osh got when he left. And so I replaced O'Shea in terms of, okay, he's the next guy we're going to get on. And he left us. And I think, not everybody knows the inner workings of what goes on in the decisions to leave.
Of course not, no.
My decision to start in Toronto was different. I had no choice. They signed me? Absolutely. I'm playing in the CFL. I don't care. After 2 years of playing in Toronto, it was my choice as a free agent. I wanted to come to Hamilton. And then after 5 years and a lot of success in, certainly 98, 99, 2000, into 2001, you've been there now I was there for 5 years in a row. it started to get almost like a bit stale, not necessarily for me, but you can feel where there needed to be some changes. We had the kind of same coaching staff. We had some new players come in. You could see my role changing. And I just didn't feel like there was that love that was there before. And I also felt like I think I need a change because I think I need a kickstart myself, right? I think it's not going to be an easy change. And I think in hindsight, I wouldn't change a thing, by the way, but in hindsight, my one regret is I didn't go out west to play, to get that experience, right? But I did what was best for me at that time and the opportunities available to me. And going to Toronto, what made it easier is that I ended up playing with a lot of guys that I played with in Hamilton, right? And it softened that blow in the locker room. But when I came back to Hamilton on Labor Day, and I'll never forget, Pinball was the coach at the time, and in typical Pinball fashion, they call out the captains for the game on Labor Day, and he puts out every captain is every Hamilton player that has moved to Toronto. And he purposely does it. And as I'm walking out, it was Jeff Johnson. It might have been like Adriano Belli and myself, and Joe might have been there at the time, Montfort, because he went back. So it was a way to fan the flames. And they instantly, at that point, what was there, 27 to 30,000 people at that point screaming Morreale sucks. And I thought, well, at least they care. I mean, it was a moment I'll never forget. It was amazing because it just showed the passion of the decision in real life, right? It was kind of neat.
It's a cardinal sin.
It's a sin. I still, believe me. I wear the velvet, what's it called? The velvet whatever. Oh, man, I can't escape it. I'd never wear my Grey Cup ring, Toronto Grey Cup ring in Hamilton. Never.
And speaking of Grey Cup, but just before you go to Toronto, there's some years there, 98, 99, the little general comes in, the whole Tiger Cats program come in, 98, you win the All-Canadian Award. I mean, that's got to be the basis of like, I'm doing something well here. Yeah. And then eventually that rolls into the Grey Cup victory in 99 where, there are so many people that on that squad that are legendary to this city. Just talk to me a little bit about those days and how special it was to wear the black and gold.
Oh my God. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think this year will be 25 years since we won that cup, and no other team has won since then. That pisses me off. I wish, I don't want to be the last, and none of my teammates want to be the last. But, when Ron came in, that was the turning point, right? I came here in '97. We were 2-16 or 4-14. At that point, who remembers? We didn't do well. We went through 11 quarterbacks. We run Calvillo out of town. We're basically starting from scratch, but we had a good squad. We had guys that can play. And then Ron was the first guy to turn to myself and to Andrew Grigg within days of taking the job and saying, "You're going to be my starting receivers this year." That was a game changer because no one had ever said that to me. Like, we were situational players. We would run plays in, Andrew and I, in 97. And my first couple of years, I was, I got some playing time, but I wasn't a bona fide starter.
You were the typical Canadian player.
Yeah, I was the guy that went over the middle, got the crap kicked out of me, which I did my whole career, by the way, and loved it. But Ron was the first one to instill that confidence. And then he was also the one to say at training camp, the guys in this room are the guys I want here at the end of the year. Now, it doesn't always necessarily work that way, but there was a commitment to keeping everybody together because he believed in us, and all we had to do was do our job. But the relationships, the friendships that were built among that team, I mean, we've talked about it publicly on length. When we see each other, it's family. Like, it's part of who I am. It's part of what allowed me to grow to what, the person I became. And I was challenged, and we had lots of laughs and lots of good times, and we won. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you can replicate a lot of that anymore just because of we didn't have distractions back. There was no distractions. We practiced at 1:30 in the afternoon, but to a man, we were there at 8 in the morning playing cribbage and playing dominoes and playing foosball and, working out and doing the other stuff too. But you've been in those locker rooms. We had a lot of fun. And you need a thick skin to get in that locker room and to stay in there. But there was no black and white. there was no American Canadian. There was no young and old. And we had guys like Lamar, McGriggs, and Calvin Tiggle that said he put people in their place, right? There never felt like anybody overstepped. Right. We all had our role. We all identified what it was, and we're successful doing it.
You have this great career, and then out of nowhere, and again, the love affair with the Hamilton fans with you. I mean, it's at its height right now as you're a veteran player. Mm-hmm. And, there's another guy as well, too, in the likes of Rob Hitchcock, who kind of, he went to the United States, but he too was a Hamilton guy that built his reputation, another all-star player. And there's a kind of a linkage between the two of you, the Bobbsey twins. I used to hear some funny stories between the two of you, and I'm sure you had some great stories that we'll never hear about, and we probably should never hear about. Right? But there's all of a sudden this, you tell me, a forced retirement.
Yeah, it was tough. It still lingers for Rob and I. I've certainly gotten over it, but it took me a while to get over. I was going into my 13th training camp, actually my 14th if you count the BC one, but my 13th season, as was Rob. There had been a changeover. Bob Young had come in. Marcel Desjardins was the new GM. Scott Mitchell was the new president at that time. So there's a lot of hierarchy that had changed. And I think they, without pointing fingers, I think they wanted to put their stamp on it. And new coach and Charlie Taft. There's a lot of stuff. Now the lead into the decision was what I think caught Rob and I off guard, because when they signed Charlie Taft, one of the first meetings we had was with him where he said, okay, you're my vets, either side of the ball. I need you to help me here. You're going to help this team forge forward. We got a young team. We've drafted, pretty good, but we're young and, we're coming off some tough seasons, but you guys are going to be on my base. So we were with the understanding that that was our job, and it kind of came natural because at that point in your career, you really have to be the leader, right? Mm-hmm. On and off the field. So great training camp for myself. I know Rob had a good camp, but I was probably at that point, even at 36, playing some of my best football because the game had slowed down to a point where I could recognize things so much easier. Mm-hmm. So getting the call to go downstairs during training camp was like a bit of didn't shock me because I was at that point a member at large of the Players Association. We're in the middle of a collective bargaining agreement. It would be typical that I would meet with the front office and talk about, hey, where are we at? What's going on?
Sure.
But when I walked into the meeting downstairs and saw the faces sitting around and the Scott Mitchells and the Desjardins and Mike McCarthy and so whatever, I knew I walked into something that I didn't want to be in. I was like, this doesn't feel right. And I said, what's going on, guys? And they said, well, listen, unfortunately we've made a decision to let you go, and I was like, I was shocked. And he said, we've also made a decision to let Hitch go. And when they said that took me, because to me it's like, okay, Hitch is not left. Hitch didn't go to Toronto. Hitch didn't go anywhere. Hitch has been the bona fide heart and soul of that defense for 12 years, and there's no way. Like, there's no one to replace Hitch. Maybe this year they finally replaced him with Katzentonis.
Yeah,
he plays like Rob does, right? And Craig Butler played with that edge, but It was a while before that happened. So, long story short, we hear the news. We're crushed. They wanted us to kind of retire and take a job in the front office, and they didn't have any ideas of what it was other than I think they wanted us to walk away quietly. Right. And I wasn't walking away quietly. It wasn't going to happen. I just didn't believe in it. Mm-hmm. And the Rob one really affected me. So we went upstairs, and Charlie Taft comes upstairs. He wasn't in the meeting, and he's like, what's going on? And we can see from the dorm.
He has no idea.
He has no idea. So they're practicing on the field, walking out to practice, and we're in our dorm room, and Taft starts to break down. And we're like, listen, coach, like, I don't understand this. This was our last year. Like, we're not playing beyond this. This was our year to go out. Like, we understand our role. And he's like, oh, one more. Do you want me to go down? We'll see if we can change it. I said, no, we're not. You can't change it. We just got cut. Like, there was a disconnect. So that goes on. And then, news is they want to go and have a press conference and announce this. And I said, well, you're not having a press conference without Rob and I. And I don't know if you were at that press conference.
I was there.
It was, I'll let you speak for yourself, but it was one of the strangest, awkwardest, most awkward press conferences you've ever seen, because you have, senior leadership that's upset about a decision they made, and two guys that still want to play. They're sitting and understanding why it's happening. And but that was kind of the point where I think we're like, no, like there's something here. Like Rob and I can't just sail into the sunset without you guys realizing we don't want to. No, the decision is the decision.
And I think this entire city knew that. Yeah. What? Like, there's no way you're cutting our guys.
It was, and to go as a package was even worse. Like, just get rid of me if you don't want me or whatever, or just get rid of Rob. But to put us together, and it's kind of, in one way, it's linked us together ever since, right? In a good way. But it took me a while. It took me a good 3 or 4 years to, like, even want to know what was happening. And because you get, in sport, you always think you got another play left in you, and sometimes you don't. In this case, we thought we did, and when it gets ripped out away, it's tough. But Ronnie Lancaster told us from day one, you make them rip that jersey off the back. You never go out on your own. You make sure they rip that jersey off your back. That's the only way to leave. So in some respects, that just galvanized the next stage of my life.
And you know what? And Rob would go on to play a year with the Eskimos, which was bizarre. I'll
final 3 games of that season he played. Yep.
Seemed very bizarre. But you get into this part of life that, as you would know, and I think because you had ties with the Players Association retirement, that can be a very, I'll use the word scary thing for a lot of athletes, because the practices, the workouts, the boys, the 18, 20,000 people aren't there anymore.
Yeah. It's torturous. It really is. It's and the longer you play, the harder it is, because there's a couple things that happen. Your life has been on a schedule forever, and you have all those fringe benefits and things that make you tick and it gets you going. And then, you're entering the workforce in your late 30s, and it's not easy to compete against people that have gone to school and got their MBAs and all this other stuff. So it's like a void has been created, and I was just so blessed that, all the work that I've been doing behind the scenes with the Players Association as a rep and executive, that we helped create this, marketing arm of the Players Association, and I was tasked to lead it. That was the soft landing that I don't know if that didn't happen I'd be talking to you like this now about where I am and what I'm doing, because if I look around at all the guys I played with and against over thousands of players over, a long career, a vast majority of them have struggled and continue to struggle. And, in my role as president, I would face that head on, and it wasn't pretty. And I was just fortunate. The others, they gave everything to football, but when football's done, right? I was able to live in the city I played in. It helped soften that, and then still be involved in football meant that I was around that environment, right, that I craved. Wasn't playing, but that's okay. I still got the vibes. But those are, for anybody, no matter what league you play in, and the length of time you play, it's a sharp drop at the end.
The best part for you is that family life really kicks in, wife, 2 kids, and then next thing you know, a basketball, not a football, becomes a major part of your life. How did that all happen?
Again, it was the challenge, right? I when I was in the CFL, I believe, and I thought about this on the way up, I've been in professional sports in Canada for 30 years. That's ridiculous. To me, it's like a ridiculous number. I'm like, that's crazy. But I always believed that I had value off the field, just because I felt, and at that time I'd picked up the broadcasting stuff first with the Score and then with the others. And so I had a very well-rounded look at, all my roles at the PA and as a player with what made the league tick. So I was hoping that I could infiltrate into the CFL or a team level at some point. Of course, with the Ticats would have been where I would love to go. But it's tough to crack that group of people that have been together for so long and the tradition. So, that started to wane and wane and wane, but the desire to be on the business side of sport was always intriguing to me. But in Canada, it's a very, very limited opportunities.
That's right.
Very limited. And less limited now because of the CEBL and the CPL. But other than that, there was the CFL as the only domestic league. And they weren't taking too many new joiners. So long story short, I used that kind of as a resolve to say, okay, well, I'm not going to change my desire to be, but, I got to start looking at other things to do. And I took some jobs that I look back now and go, oh, that job sucked. Like real jobs, not where I walked into like the lunchroom. I'm like, this isn't like what I'm used to. I better just say nothing and put my head down. But man, you have to struggle a bit, I think, to be able to really appreciate the next steps. And by chance, one of the jobs I had, which was my final job before taking my role with the CBL, was selling private jets. So it wasn't a bad
private jets.
Yeah, it wasn't a bad gig.
I didn't know this.
This was a good gig I got at the end, and I was quite lucrative, and it was very interesting meeting the top 1% of people and the very first.
So just selling time,
yeah, on fractional ownership of jets.
Okay,
which is a very big business.
Wow,
and actually ramped up because of COVID even more. Right, the security and the time and all that stuff saved. So the first meeting I had about jets was with this gentleman named Richard Petco, who was interested in who is now and was my boss and was the founder of the CBL, but at the time owned a team in a rival league. A league that I wasn't even aware of, and we befriended each other. He recognized me from the CFL. He was a Mississauga guy, so he kind of knew me from the Argos, which, again, there was some shining light in being the Argos, right? There's got to be something. And he just started picking my brain on some of the problems he was having running a team in a league that really didn't have a lot of leadership. And he tasked me, he said, listen, I want to put your name to be the commissioner of this league. And I'm like, well, I don't know anything about it, but let's check it out. And in short order, within 5 minutes of meeting the other owners, I just felt it wasn't for me. And I'd said to him, I don't know why you're spending your good money on this. There's just something's missing. You're doing a great job, but you'll never get to where you want to get to. There's just nothing there. And he said, well, that's why I sent you in. He goes, how about we do something on our own? And I said, okay, what'd you have in mind? He said, I think we could play a FIBA-style game in the spring and summer and do what has been done all over the world outside of North America, which is strong domestic sports leagues that generate incredible talent, right? And if you look at the World Cup or the Olympics, you see it. And the best teams are not always U.S. and Canada. They're Australia or France or Italy or whatever. So that started the path of, oh, this is cool. So I actually held on to my job of selling jets as I was sitting at a boardroom in Niagara of a team that was playing in another league, and I was sketching out the map to what this would look like. So I had the general understanding of this is kind of the framework that to work from. How do I make it work? Like, how do we attract players? How do we pay players? Where do we play? What are the rules? And so it was like, full steam ahead, and it just captured me. And I loved that creativity. And Rich, to this day, still is never told me what to do. I remember early on asking him, hey, I got this idea about blank. And he says, Mike, I hired you to do the job. You're the expert, do the job. And that runway just gave me that, just revived me. And I'm like, okay, I'm off to the races. This is make it or break it. I'm putting everything I have into this thing.
Amazing, and the timing couldn't be better. Of course, you're looking at the Raptors championship. We're looking at a whole new community of people in Canada that don't always see hockey as number one.
Yep.
They see basketball as number one. And this is not just, this is men and women as well, too. This sport is growing and your league is growing. And there are so many great days I think you probably enjoy. And again, we'll look back at later. Let me look back at one day that really I'll never forget. The Scarborough Shooting Stars, their debut home game was something I will never forget. Like,
it was
like it was crazy. Like, there it is, one time for the end. Like it was incredible. And you were, gracious enough to give me great seats as a media member. And I'm sitting courtside, and Alec Manoa is beside me. You're down the line. Marcia, there was like government, Maestro Fresh West. And then all of a sudden there's just this crowd of people that come in. And I look, and I'm like, oh, it's somebody big. And it's Drake. Drake is sitting right across from me. I'm like, holy mackerel, Drake is right here. And now, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if he had some ownership in it. And also, playing on this team is J. Cole. Like, J. Cole is... I know him for his music. I didn't really. I had heard he could play hoops a little bit, but the fact that he was going to put himself in playing against professional people was a shock to me. Yeah. Can you just describe that vibe of what was going on that day?
Well, I'll take you back a little bit before that when Nico Carino, who's Drake's best friend and one of the owners of Scarborough, of OVO fame, walked in to my office, said, "Listen, got this idea. And we're going to bring J. Cole." Drake talked to him. They were at a party last year, told him about the CEBL, and he's in. He said, but he's a little concerned over the way he was treated at the BAL, the Basketball Africa League. So he had played the year before in the Basketball Africa League. He's a huge hoops fan. Mm-hmm. Grew up in North Carolina, got all that old school Tar Heel, hoops. Started playing, around university, wanted to play collegiately, but then got into the music game. But never that dream never left him. So I had that understanding. So it wasn't hokey to me. It was like, okay, no, I know the guy can hoop. I'm not suggesting he's the best guy on the court, but Nico's like, but he's taking this seriously, Mike. Like, this is. I said, well, if it's serious, let's start talking about it, and let's not abuse him. He comes here, I'm going to treat him like a basketball player, like any other basketball player, and that's it. And you can let him know that there'll be no special treatment, but there'll be no taking advantage of who he is. Mm-hmm. So unbeknownst to us, we didn't understand the impact of signing J. Cole. Like, we thought, okay, this guy's arguably one of the top 3, artists of the decade or of the century, but what will his impact be on ticket sales? We didn't know. We prepared, but we underprepared for the onslaught that happened. And the first day that it was announced, and the lead up to that was crazy because I had Shams Charania calling me almost every day. I heard J. Cole's coming to play for Scarborough. I said, listen, Shams, like, I can't confirm or deny that. Like, and
insider
back
action
again. And this is what I'm hearing. And I said, okay, listen, Shams, you got to do me a solid here. It's going to happen. But I need you just to hold tight until I know for sure that we can get this deal across the line, and then you got it. Go nuts. And to his credit, a guy like him, for people that don't know, he's one of the biggest NBA insiders, right? So, I think back to my years of working with the media, it's just, if you're fair to the media and you're honest with the media, they'll be honest back. Like, they have a job to do. I think so I've always had that kind of relationship. He trusted that I wouldn't sue him, and I trusted and it worked out great. And he announced it about an hour before we did, and that was cool, and I was fine with that. And then it blew up. And to your point about that day in Scarborough, like, it was, the Scotty Barnes, the Alex Manoahs, Drake, and it's just, if you go back to me sitting at a desk in Niagara, Drake attending one of the CBL games would be like a mind-blowing phenomenon, right? Because we knew he was a basketball fan and a Raptor fan and ambassador. But for him to walk onto a CBL court would have been like,
it was insane.
And there he is. And I'm like, wow. And just soaking it all in, the experience was great. And I don't know if J. Cole scored 3 points that night or 5 or whatever he did. The atmosphere that was created really sent some alarm bells off to say, okay, wow, it's not just basketball, it's entertainment, right? There's more here. We've got a little bit of, something going. It's starting to catch on, and this could be a major step in where this league is, how this league is perceived, how it's recognized, how people are aware of it, and that was a huge moment.
I don't want to get you too fired up, and I'd be remiss here on this podcast if I did not bring this up. I was honored to attend Hamilton Honey Badger games. Look at you laughing right there. And
so was I.
You know, and this was awesome. And it had to have been even better for you as a Hamilton guy to, you know, you're the commissioner of this league and you got a team in your hometown. And right now we don't have professional basketball being played in Hamilton for various reasons. We don't have the Ontario Hockey League playing their games, and we'll soon lose lacrosse for the obvious reasons of reconstruction of the arena. But your feelings on the fact that right now, this year as we stand, the Hamilton Honey Badgers could have been
still playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I wrestled over that, and if you go back to the very beginning, there were some very profound people, that understand the sporting landscape that told me, do not put a team in Hamilton, do not, for various reasons that I'll keep private, and I still believe, but at the time I believe, well, no, this is important to me, like personally, this is a market, and I grew up understanding the transways and the Brebeuf basketball and the MAGA basketball and all these things. I knew there was a good basketball community here, and I'd seen it firsthand. So I said, no, like we can make it work. I think what I underestimated was the venue, the people wanting to come downtown, people, making that a destination. It was a little bit more difficult. It wasn't the decision that we're not here. We were continuing to grow that market, and we were making incremental leaps year over year. It relative to others, it wasn't doing as well as I had hoped it would do. But to this day, I still believe it's a strong basketball market that, if done properly in the proper venue, again, with a proper ownership group, that it could be successful. But the decision, there was just a lot of non-communication or miscommunication around the venue getting done. And when you're a young league and a young team that has only played 2 years, going into 3 years, playing at a specific venue, and all of a sudden you're told, hey, you can't do that anymore. You need to find another place to play. And by the way, there are no other places to play, in the city. What do? Do you go to MAC and devalue that product and maybe not even get any court time because of all the stuff they have going on in the summers? Do you go to the Dave Andrzejczyk Arena and you can't play because the scoreboard's too low and you literally, an inbounds pass could hit it, right? These are all things that people don't realize, but we did our homework and we went around. Or do you go to Burlington and maybe you stay in that region and trying to make it work? And then there were some goods in those decisions, but then it just kept getting delayed. And then we just didn't hear. And finally, we just couldn't conduct business properly. And that franchise would just have been in purgatory for 3, 4, 5 years. And that's not good for the fans. It's not good for the players. It's not an experience, not good for the league. So we made a decision to leave. And I don't regret the decision one bit. It was the right business decision to do. I wish it would have been.
You're commissioner.
Yeah, it's my decision. And I believed in it wholeheartedly. And I wouldn't change it for the world. And in many cases, the proof's almost in the pudding, is that, we left in 2022 and nothing's happened yet to the building. It's 2024 and it may not get finished till 2026 or beyond. And would we like to return? I think in a perfect scenario we would, which is a rebuilt and renovated arena, which I believe will happen. Mm-hmm. But then there's talks about that arena being primarily a concert arena. Well, then, I'll cross that bridge when we come to it, when that happens. But that does take away most weekends. And if you're a sports franchise, you want to play on prime nights. So I feel bad for the Hamilton basketball community because I see what the CEBL and our teams have done in the other markets we play in. I see what they've done in a Winnipeg where, signups have gone 23% year over year, and they attribute 19% of that to the Sea Bears. And I've seen what's happening in Calgary and all these major markets. And I look at Hamilton, and I, as a resident or a former resident, I'm just like, what's happening? Like, this should be happening here, right? We should, first of all, have a mid-sized facility to play in. Mm-hmm. Like, right off the bat, there should be a 5,000 to 7,000 seat arena anyways in a market of our size that would attract a ton of other things. And I know Michael had that plan, which I would have loved.
Would have been great.
Frankly. Yeah. That's where our fans are. They're up the hill. But I mean, without getting into the inner workings, for whatever reasons things got extended or communication broke down, it happens. We're in that position. We made a decision. I'm fine with it. Would I like to come back? It's on my board, and when I present to our ownership group, Hamilton is listed, and there's an asterisk because things have to happen. Mm-hmm. But Hamilton is a market that we believe can be really successful, and I'd love to see it for the generations of fans that can actually look on the court and say, I can be there one day.
It just made sense. I mean, a team in St. Catharines, a team in Hamilton, a team, which kind of represents Toronto and Scarborough. It's bothersome, and it's bothersome to the many people that, as you well know, represent the basketball community here in Hamilton. Let me leave you on this. Let's bring up a picture of something of a Hamiltonian. Yep. We'll say that's kind of doing pretty well, and this is what this guy's blown up.
I tell you, he looks like just a young, fresh-faced kid here. Now, that's going back to our inaugural year, I think so, 2019 or 2020. It must have been 2019 because 2020 we were in the bubble. He would come with Nikhil, his girlfriend, his buddies, and he'd sit courtside. He'd sit up in the stands. He would be open and welcoming to everybody. I couldn't be more excited about the success that man has had, and the way he carries himself and what he's going to do for this country and what he's done for the country. And if you listen to Shea talk, he mentions Hamilton all the time. So in a crystal ball, in a perfect world, the arena gets done and Shea is that, multi-time all-star and maybe an MVP, and maybe there's a way to work with Shea and Nikhil and others to bring basketball back to Hamilton. Right? That's the way I think. Now,
interesting.
Is that the way Shea thinks? I don't know. He's a busy man right now. Sure. But he's got a lot of stuff to do. But I think what we've seen in my discussions in other markets with other similar type players is, there hasn't been a lot of new money in basketball, right? There's not a lot of old money, in basketball. There's a lot of new money now. And I think a lot of these athletes really want to give back to the communities they grew up in, whether it's Jamal in Kitchener or Andrew Wiggins in Mississauga or McClure. Shea in Hamilton and Jamal in Scarborough. And that ability to give back and be involved in the youth and be involved in professional sport is a big hook. And I think we have a really good opportunity for those individuals to be part of it.
Mike, this has been a lot of fun to sit down and catch up with you. I've been fortunate enough to kind of follow your, and put a microphone in front of you in that locker room back in those wild days with the Tiger Cats. And, whether you working with the PA, we've had some opportunities there. Working as a member of Filthy McNasty.
Oh, yeah, we had some good times there, too.
Good times, working in the restaurant industry. And now to see you in this role now, it's amazing because you haven't been able to look back with us here. But, your career is it's still blossoming.
I think it's just getting started.
It really is. And it's so awesome to see you. And I know I'm not the only one that believes that because, as I said, you've set the table, and I will call you that 5-star guy because you kind of did it all, man. Wow. But one led to the other.
Yeah.
And it's been a treat to kind of watch it along the way. So thank you for joining us here on the Sportsline Podcast. I really hope that you've kind of maybe set the stage for some other person to do the same thing and inspired someone. So, dude, thank you so much for coming in.
Appreciate it. This has been great, man. And congratulations. Keep it going.
Right on.
5 years from now, I'll do it again.
Right on. Look forward to it. Folks, we love talking sports from a local, provincial, and national perspective. If you do know of an athlete, team, or event to promote, the Sportsline Podcast wants you. Contact me on many of the CHCH social media platforms, and we'll get you right here on the Cozy Couch. We love it, just like Mike. Please hit that thumbs up, like, and subscribe button because we certainly do need your feedback and appreciate it as well. For the wonderful minds and hands that make this podcast possible, thank you for joining us, and we will see you tomorrow.